the TNT game last night, Houston at Phoenix, Daryl Morey, the general manager of the Houston Rockets, tweeted the following. Best part of being at a TNT game live is that it's easy to avoid Charles spewing misinformed, biased vitriol disguised as entertainment. Charles Barkley found out about the tweet. He responded. Let's listen.
I'm not worried about Daryl Morey. He's one of those idiots who believe in analytics. He went out and got James Harden and got Dwight Howard and gonna tell me that's analytics. Then he went out and got Trevor Ariza, but then he went out and got Josh Smith. So first of all, I've always believed analytics was crap, and I never mentioned the Rockets as a legitimate contender because they're not. And listen, I wouldn't know Daryl Morey if he walked in this room right now. Analytics don't work at all. They're just a crap to some people who were really smart, made up to try to get in the game because they had no talent. Because they had no talent to be able to play.
I agree with you on that.
So smart guys wanted to fit in. So they made up a term called analytics. Analytics don't work.
Analytics don't work. Stephen A., Barkley have a point?
Not entirely, to be honest with you. First of all, he was absolutely hysterical because he said a couple of other lines about folks with analytics, how they didn't get the girls in school. I almost fell off my chair when he said that. He was absolutely hysterical and hilarious in that regard. But I'm not going to say I completely agree with Charles Barkley on this. It's not the be-all and end-all. The level of emphasis that's placed on it is definitely disturbing, and I don't blame coaches and players and commentators like Barkley for resisting that, whether it's Barkley, whether it's Stan Van Gundy, who has spoken out of it in the past, whether it's Lionel Hollins, now the coach of the Brooklyn Nets, who some would argue lost his job in Memphis because he wasn't one of those analytics dudes. I don't blame him for feeling that way. And there's a bevy of other coaches in this league, particularly old school guys, that highlight how, this shouldn't usurp your knowledge about the game of basketball, and more important, the most important element of all, and that is mingling players with different personalities together, because analytics is not going to do that for you. They have a very, very valid point in that regard, and Barkley wasn't wrong with what he talked about. Don't give me analytics when it comes to MJ and Scottie Pippen, when it comes to Shaq and Kobe, when it comes, to people like that. Nobody wants to hear that. But you can't just flat out dismiss it either, because it does have its place in the game. First of all, what Barkley and others need to accept is this. This language, whether it's sabermetrics or whatever you want to call it, whether it's almost like mathematicians getting together, it's the language that owners are most comfortable listening to, because it's a language that they speak, because when they cut the check, they want a way in the psyche of their own minds, in the crevices of their own mind. They want information that to them justifies the commitment and the investment that they're making. They need this. It's almost tantamount to television networks doing their research and having focus groups and things of that nature to see who resonates, who brings in numbers, who moves the needle per se, or whatever the case may be. All of those things are relevant. Well, this is the owner's definition of that. And somehow, some way you go out and you find these whiz kids that pay attention to numbers and quantitative measures and all of this other stuff, and they bring this information to owners to justify investments that you can make beyond the stars. You need mid-level players, you need marginal players. How can you gauge or quantify their contribution to a particular roster, team, etc.? So they go that route. When you realize that, you recognize that it's not going anywhere, and that indeed it may very well have its place. John Hollinger, who worked here at ESPN for 8 years before taking over as the VP of basketball operations for the Memphis Grizzlies, they're a title contender. He has something to do with that. It's not just him. Chris Wallace, who's the interim GM and is now the GM, who's done an outstanding job as far as I'm concerned, he's got something to do with that too. Their coach, Yeager, he's got something to do with it. But so does Zach Randolph, Marcus Gasol, and those guys. But how they play, the theories that they follow, has led to some success, and they are a legitimate title contender. There is no question about that about the Memphis Grizzlies. But John Hollinger has something to do with that. We have to show our respect and give him credit for that. Daryl Morey, listen, I don't dislike the guy. I don't know him very well. We met him. He came on first take. Seems to be like a very nice man to me. I think he's done a decent job with Houston. But at the same time, it has a lot to do with him getting James Harden. It has a lot to do with him getting Dwight Howard. So it's more so James Harden. So we can't ignore that. In the end, what it comes down to is that basketball has evolved over the years. The rim wasn't always 10 feet high. There wasn't always a three-point shot. You know, once upon a time, you shot the ball underhanded, not just with free throws, but with jump shots. That doesn't work right now. Somewhere along the way, somebody said...
about shot underhanded jump shots.
Well, you're right about that. But I've seen guys, the jump shot, the fast break, the three-point shot, just everything. When you look at basketball, it has evolved in a variety of ways. This is another process of evolution taking place. It shouldn't be the dominant factor. Barkley is right about that, but I don't summarily dismiss it the way that he does, because it does prove to have some pluses, although I believe not nearly as many as the analytic dudes try to equate.
Okay, several quick points. Number one, I know Daryl Morey a little bit. He has some showman in him. Do you remember what he brought to you when we did the All-Star Friday?
Chandler Parsons.
A life-size poster of Chandler Parsons, because you've been on Chandler Parsons.
That's right.
And it was a funny moment.
That's right.
Because he's got some showmanship to him. So I think this tweet, it's over the top, man. Misinformed, biased vitriol disguised as entertainment.
He wasn't joking. He was joking with me. He wasn't joking with Barkley.
But I'm saying he knew this would press Charles Button. He knew that on a night TNT was there, that he could get a post-game response and some attention out of this. And I believe somewhere right now he is chuckling and chortling watching all this happen, watching all this unfold. There was some method to the madness because he enjoys this kind of sparring. Okay. Now, bigger picture here. I hope that Charles realizes, and I know you're starting to realize, and it has hit me like a ton of bricks, that these whiz kids you talk about, they're all over the sports landscape. They are now running teams in the NBA and the National Football League and the Major League Baseball. They are running teams everywhere. The whiz kids are, the guys who did not play. And it's ironic to me because throughout my career, I've often heard from athletes, what do you know you didn't play? Well, I know a lot, actually, because I've watched it and I've studied it. I might not see it the way you see it, but I might see it a little differently than you do. All these guys, and again, they are analytics-based for the most part, so you can knock that. But all these guys did not play. The great R.C. Buford we spoke of yesterday, I think he's the best GM in basketball. He didn't play at a high level. I think he was a walk-on college football player at Oklahoma State, if I recall, but he was no big athlete, okay? So should he be disqualified as a team builder? Obviously not. Some of his offspring, so to speak, that he mentored, his protégés, Sam Presti went to Oklahoma City. Has he done okay at Oklahoma City?
You think?
Did he draft Russell Westbrook?
Right.
I mean, I didn't see that one coming, man. So my point is, they are everywhere, and Charles is just going to have to accept that they're having some success all over the landscape.
Well, this is the thing, and here's where, whether it's Charles Barkley or a bevy of Hall of Famers I've spoken to who believe what he believes, in fairness to them, first of all, I think somebody involved in analytics should be on every team in the NBA.
But these are running the show.
But running the show, understand something. You're primarily running the show because you speak a language the owners like when it comes to their pocket.
Sure.
Those people shouldn't be disguised as knowledgeable basketball experts. That's what offends basketball guys. That's what offend guys who put in the time, work, and understand some of the nuances that numbers can't teach, that numbers can't measure. You know, somebody's influence. When we're sitting here talking about LeBron James and the Kevin Love dynamic, that don't have anything to do with numbers. You understand? That has something to do with personalities. That has something to do with leadership. That has something to do with other intangibles that contribute to a team far more significantly than just numbers. So again, I'm not going to sit here and imply that there's no place for analytics. That would be foolish.
Okay.
I see the productivity on their part. I respect it. I think it should be a part of every team. It should be something that's taken into account when measuring not just a player's productivity, but team chemistry and cohesion and how it can move forward. I definitely think. But when you give them the authority to run a team, and they're sitting back and singing about numbers and not taking those other things into consideration, it is a problem, because what happens then is you know, you're just thinking, well, numbers run the show.
Yeah.
And you're not taking into account other intangibles. And I'm not saying that's what they do.
I'm with you on that.
I'm not saying that's what they do. I'm saying that's the impression these basketball people have of them. And that's a problem.
Okay. I'm with you because formulas ultimately can't factor intangibles.
Right.
I must tell you, though, the Rockets are starting to grow on me, even though I'm not a Dwight Howard fan. And you realize while he's been out, they're looking pretty good because James Harden's playing like an MVP right now.
James Harden is one of the top 2 candidates for league MVP.
He is.
He's playing better defense. It's not exceptional, but it's better defense. And he's being a leader. You see him talking to the guys.
Sure.
You're seeing him lead guys. You're seeing him holding them accountable. And this dude, and by the way, here's the part that Daryl Morey did not realize. He didn't realize this with Barkley talking about him last night. James Harden put on a show in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, he did.
I watched the whole fourth quarter. It was a spectacular display. I saw nothing about what James Harden did having anything to do with analytics. I saw nothing. I saw a boy put on a show.
Okay.
I mean, I'm talking about dancing and all of that. I didn't see coaching. I didn't see quantitative measures being, sabermetrics. I didn't see any of that. I saw James Harden
All right.
take the ball and say, move out the way.
Okay.
That's what I saw.
But you've also told me that at the finals that James played in, and we're going back now 3 years back,
Yes, which
he
he's still upset
disappeared.
about,
And he was upset about you.
Yeah, he's still upset. He'll
you
get over
just
it
called
someday.
it the way it was.
He'll get over it someday.
All right, that's fine.
But he just didn't show up.
Okay.
It wasn't that he played bad. It's that he didn't seem to try to be aggressive.
Okay. So my issues with the Rockets are I use the eye test more than I use analytics. Dwight Howard, to me, I've said it from the start, not a winning basketball player. That's just me. Josh Smith they acquired. I don't love that. He's not a winning player. So I still look at this team, and by the Hollinger stat, the defensive efficiency quotient, they're ranked 7th in the NBA right now. So they are improving somewhat on defense, and that takes into account that Dwight has not been there and probably won't be there for a while.
The basketball guys are going to sit there, Skip, and say, give me all of those numbers. Let's see if they get out the first round.
Well, and I'm with you.
Because the point is that at the end of the year, this is the difference. We're looking at whether or not they get out the first round.
Right.
The analytics dudes, they're going to sit there and be like, these are the numbers. Look at how we improve.
Right, how we improve,
and the Barkleys of the world are saying, stop it. Because in the end, what are you really, really doing?
Yeah.
We still know you're going home in the first round. That's the thinking. So the analytics has to show. I don't think that somebody like Daryl Morey should be speaking on it. I think somebody like John Hollinger may have a point. Because when you see Memphis and what they've put together, what they've kept together, and why they kept it together, now they got a shot to advance. And if they advance, this whole analytics movement is going to take on a different dimension because we're going to look at them and say, hey,
they did it.
They did it.
No, the Spurs have been using it for years.
I understand.
They just don't gloat about it. They don't make a big...
they've been doing it, but Skip, it's not going to be taken as seriously because you got Tim Duncan.
Yeah.
And you got Greg Popovich. But this guy with Jaeger coming out of nowhere, replacing Lionel Hollins, and inside of 2 years, if you end up in the conference finals and you're doing, we're going to take notice of that.
Yeah. Well, they added Jeff Green.
Morey in analytics and his overall success. Since he's been with the Rockets since 2007, during that time, they're tied with the Lakers for the 3rd best record in the NBA, behind only the Spurs and the Mavericks. Something to be said. We leave it there because